Welcome back to Critically Incorrect, your weekly gaming podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, joined today by Charlie, if you wanted to say hi.
Hello.
So yeah, this is the most recent episode. We didn't have an episode last week just strictly because of holiday issues, and obviously, there wasn't much news to talk about, so we figured we'd combine everything from last week into this week's episode to make it more, acceptable for an episode. So yeah, just to give you a quick layout of this episode, we're going to talk about, of course, out this week, which we always do, talk about the little bit of gaming news that's going on. But the main thing we're going to use this episode to talk about is our Spider-Man No Way Home kind of spoiler cast. So this whole entire episode won't be, a spoiler cast, obviously. We'll give timestamps as we always do in the description below. So if you want to skip to that, you can. And then, of course, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you could drop off at that point. So yeah, with that being said, Charlie, what have you been playing over the holiday break?
Yeah, so far there hasn't been a ton I've been playing, but I am getting ready to hop back into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've been playing a little bit over the past few days, but that's going to be my main game I'm playing sort of over the next few days whilst I'm off. I just really want to get back into it. I think the announcement of like that Ragnarok DLC kind of got me interested in hopping back in. And I'm enjoying it quite a bit, like just chipping away at the stuff. Like it is insanely big. There is too much to do, but doing it in like little chunks and stuff is quite nice. So I'm looking forward to playing some more of that over the next week or two. But what I have been playing, my main game when I've had time, is Weird West, which actually did recently get a delay. I might as well talk about it here. It's the new game from some of the guys who worked on Dishonored, and left after Dishonored 2 and Prey, and this is their next sort of smaller immersive sim type game. It was meant to be coming out next month, and they've got like a beta test going on right now, but it did get delayed to March just because of feedback and stuff they got on it. I think I've played about 5 hours. As far as I know, like we have access to the whole game, so I think you can sign up through Devolver Digital and play it that way. But yeah, I've played about 5 hours. It's really fun. Like it's a really cool, like Wild West with some supernatural stuff, like top down kind of like action RPG type game. With a pretty interesting story, but it's just got some cool mechanics with how, um, you can affect the world with what you do in missions and like who you kill and that kind of thing. Like it's really fun. It's just cool to have more Wild West style games. To be honest, like there just isn't that much out there. So I have been enjoying that. I'm definitely going to be playing more of that over the next few days. But other than that, I think that's really it. I think I've played a little bit of Fortnite here or there, but I haven't played as much as I would like because I've been pretty busy at work. But yeah, that's been about it for me at the moment.
Right on, right on. I haven't played terribly much. I thought I'd be playing more than I was. I mean, that's the story of my life on this podcast, apparently. But seemingly, really, the only game I've been playing over the last few weeks has been Dark Souls. I think I mentioned I wanted to play like Deathloop and Guardians of the Galaxy over the break. I ended up starting Dark Souls, and I've really loved it. I'm probably like it's really hard because obviously Souls games like time perspective is always wrong, right? You always say you've only played for 2 hours, but it's been like 10 hours. I think I'm like realistically around the 10 hour mark, but I could be wrong. It might be a little bit shorter than that. I'm really liking it so far. I'm like 6 or 7 bosses in. I'm like in Blight Town. I'm really enjoying it. I started Dark Souls like the whole series as a whole with three. That was like after Bloodborne, and I don't know. There's something about three where like the color palette just looks really washed out, and overall the way that game isn't like my favorite Souls game. Even though a lot of people would say it's their favorite out of the three, I'm really liking Dark Souls. For me, it's a really good blend of like Demon Souls in terms of like level layout, but still keeping that connected like overall world being very connected. In particular with Dark Souls, I'm really impressed with the levels and how they all connect to like the starter area, at least so far from what I played. There's just a lot of cool things about it that I like, so I've been very pleasantly surprised with that game. I even streamed it the other day or so. So yeah, I've really been enjoying that. Besides that, it hasn't really been much. I've been mainly focusing on game dev, and also preparing for like courses I'm going to be taking next quarter, here in like a week. Although I'm kind of regretting that because now I'm already like a week away from going back to school, and I'm like, I probably should spend some more time just, playing games and just enjoying my time off. So I might be doing more of that in the next week or so I can actually get a break. But yeah, that's been pretty much what I've been up to. Yeah, I've been playing Fortnite with like friends, of course, as well. That's been pretty fun. But yeah, nothing terribly much besides Dark Souls. Yeah, I guess that brings us to releases. And yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is apparently out. I was looking at this yesterday because of the Steam sale that's been out, and I was looking at like what the top sellers are, and I saw this game there. I'm like, I did not know this game dropped. Yeah, for those that are wondering, this is the Five Nights at Freddy's game that's shown off like twice before at like the Sony PlayStation showcases or something like that. Seems to be reviewing pretty well. Currently, it's only out on PC and PlayStation platforms. So yeah, that seems pretty cool. Nothing that's really up my alley, even though this game does seem like a lot different from like those traditional Five Nights at Freddy's games, because this one looks like it actually has a budget, and actually looks like survival horror. I still wouldn't say it's up my alley, but it's still cool to see it's reviewing really well. Anyways, that brings us into the gaming news that we have. A trailer that we got just yesterday morning was a new trailer for the Uncharted movie. I was wondering where we're going to get a second trailer, just because when I saw No Way Home, I did see the Uncharted trailer before the movie started. I'm like, that's right, this is still the same trailer we got, just a few months ago. And the movie's almost out, so I imagine we're going to get another trailer here soon. And the next week, now this week, we got another trailer. I've seen like mixed impressions on this new trailer. I personally think it's a worse trailer than the first one, just because, I don't know, Sully comes across as like an asshole in this movie for me for some reason. I really don't like Mark Wahlberg playing as him. But there were some pretty cool moments, like the moment where they're like twisting the puzzle clockwise and the darts come flying out and almost kills Sully. That was probably like the best moment of that trailer that really felt like the Uncharted games. But yeah, I guess I'll let you talk about your thoughts first, Charlie. What'd you think about the new trailer we got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much the same as what I thought of the last one. I think it looks okay. Like, there wasn't anything that stood out to me that looked great, and there wasn't anything that looked bad. Like, it just looks like a fun action film with a bit of, like, Uncharted mixed in there, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know, obviously, everyone's talking about, like, the final shot because Sully does have a mustache. I still think it looks weird because it's not the right mustache.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit too small. But at the same time, like judging by that trailer, I'm almost certain that scene's like at the end of the film. Like that did not feel like that's like halfway through or anything. I
It's like
feel like
post-credit scene.
that's a post-credit scene type thing. The end of the film will happen, and then Nate will go off doing something else, and Sully will bump into him, right, and he'll have a mustache, and that'll be the end of the film. I feel like they've just chucked it in there because fans complained about it, right? And they just want to reassure you that he'll have it at some point. But yeah, no, it looked pretty cool. I like the look of the set piece they're doing with like the pirate ships. That looked very Uncharted, even if a little bit too over the
That looks
top.
over the
But I mean,
top,
sure.
yeah.
But like, yeah, it looked fun. I'll be going to see it. I mean, they're giving out free tickets if you buy like the collection anyway. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna get a ticket for free from that. So yeah, I'll be going to see it. But there wasn't anything in this trailer that got me like more excited or anything.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I like how they had like more Uncharted-esque music in this one, because the other one seemed really like a summer blockbuster.
Still not the theme though.
Yeah, it's still not the theme, but closer, which is a good start. Besides that, yeah, like you said, I'm trying to think of what else we saw in this trailer. A lot of it was like reused kind of parts of the old trailer, just like maybe different shots or angles. Yeah, the main thing for me is I really just didn't like Sully in that trailer. Just like even the scene at like the auction house, right? And then he just like leaves him there to get the cross himself, which is kind of Sully like, but I don't think Sully would ever like leave Nate just to like, fight and fend for himself. Like even in like the Uncharted 3 flashbacks, we always saw him like, protect Nate against like Marlowe and stuff like that. It seemed like he had a soft side for kids. And this one just seems like an asshole. So that's definitely always been like my weakness, even from like the looks and just the way he's playing him. I think Tom Holland's kind of fine. Yeah, just you can't really take this movie seriously. I'm still gonna go see it just because obviously I want to have an opinion on it, and I've waited so long for this movie anyway. But it's not looking good for me. But yeah, we'll move on. Anyways, a surprising update that we got was in the form of a Final Fantasy VII Remake. So essentially, we kind of covered this, I think, a few months back, that when Intergrade came out in June, essentially the only people eligible for that upgrade would be people that actually bought the game. None of the owners that, got it through the PS Plus license were able to get the upgrade. They would still have to pay. Well, this week they, alongside the PC version, they announced that people that, redeemed the game through PS Plus are now eligible for that PS5 upgrade, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, always really cool to see, that stuff happen. Just allows people that got it through PS Plus, which I know a lot of people that did. just be able to get an eligible, PS5 upgrade. What's not to love about that? So, yeah, any thoughts on that, Charlie?
Yeah, I think it's cool that they're finally doing it. If even if it is a little bit late, I imagine it's something to do with because obviously it just come out on PC. So I
Yeah,
wonder if maybe it was just the fact of, hey, we're selling it on another platform now. We might as well just for all these people that got it for free, like they might as well just upgrade. And it might have even been something to do with the fact that they might be able to see like sales numbers and stuff for the upgrade and see that most people have bought it at this point that could. So
yeah.
why not just make it free? But yeah, it's cool that it's happening. I still need to play Integrate. Maybe that's something I'll dive back into over the next few weeks. But yeah, I need to go back to it at some point.
Yeah, Intergrade's still on my list. I bought it like right before it came out, and then I
Yeah,
ended up playing
same.
Ratchet and Clank, and then I never ended up playing it. So it's like if I would have waited, I would have been able to get it for free at this point. But it is what it is. Actually, no, that would be. I think that's still paid content because it's the DLC. But yeah, I also wanted to briefly mention the PC version that came out because obviously this game did come out on that big game store. Currently, if anyone doesn't know, don't buy it on PC just yet. It looks like the PC port is very, very buggy. Currently, I believe there's like a Digital Foundry video that just released, and I talk about it. I didn't watch the video itself, but I got some tidbits on it. Apparently, like this version of the game was like a dev build or something like that. That was internal, and it just. I know the frame drops are really low, and overall, I think they even said it's like one of the worst console to like PC ports that they've seen in like quite some time. So definitely wait until they fix things out, especially given the price point of it being $69.99. Yeah, definitely not worth it at this point. So if you don't have it, if you don't own the game just yet, it is a bummer. It's not a good version of the game. But yeah, just wait until things iron out. Hopefully they do iron out. Yeah, just an update on that front. Anyways, Charlie, did you want to introduce this next news story?
Yeah, so I believe this was like a comic like convention type thing. But Ernie Hudson, who was in like the original Ghostbusters films, he was basically talking about Ghostbusters and stuff, and somebody asked him if he'd ever want to do like another game. And he said that it's definitely happening and that he's getting ready to do voice work for a new game. So I guess that's happening. A lot of people are seeming to think this is probably going to be connected to the new game coming from like the Predator and Friday the 13th devs, I think it was the like CEO of that company said that they were working on a Ghostbusters game, like on a podcast, like casually, when it hasn't even really been announced. So it seems like that's going into proper production. They're getting ready to get voice actors coming in. It's cool to see he's going to be in it as well because he's one of the original Ghostbusters. So I'm hoping this is more going to be based on like the original films and stuff because I do really like Ghostbusters. And I loved the game on PS3 and stuff. So I'm interested to see what this game ends up being. I assumed it was going to be some like co-op multiplayer thing where somebody plays the ghost, right? Because that's kind of what they
That'd be
do
cool.
really
Yeah,
well is those 4v1 type games. But if they're bringing
asynchronous. Yeah.
back like the cast and stuff, I don't really know what kind of game it's going to be now. So we'll see. I'm really excited to see what this is because I love Ghostbusters and I've enjoyed both their games. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this turns out. Hopefully it's not too far off, but I imagine it's still a ways away.
Yeah, that'd be cool if it's asynchronous multiplayer game in that universe. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I did not know about that, so that's a cool surprise. Anyways, it looks like Nickelodeon's AllStars, that fighting game that we've talked about many times on this podcast, has finally added crossplay and voice acting, at least for the future updates to come. So I know that at least voice acting was always something that people were crying out for. That was like the weird one, especially considering it's a fighting game, right? You'd always want to have lines in the game. So if they're all silent, it's very kind of odd. So that's really, really cool to see. And then crossplay, obviously, will only extend the game's life cycle. So that's always nice to see. You probably know more about this. So did you want to add any other updates or anything else that you might know?
Yeah, they did. They didn't say too much else. They said crossplay is going to be coming like Q1 next year. They said they wanted to have it for launch, but they just couldn't get it ready, so that's why it wasn't there. And voice acting, whilst they haven't like fully confirmed it, they've been teasing it on Twitter and stuff. And they basically said, I think in bold it was like, "We've been hearing your comments. So you'll be hearing from us soon." So people are like, okay, they're talking about voice acting and stuff. So it seems like I imagine the game sold pretty well, so they were able to, pitch to Nickelodeon, whoever publishes the game, to actually get some of the voice actors in. Because I think that was the big takeaway is that the game probably didn't have a massive budget, so they just couldn't get all the voice actors in for these characters, right? So it's cool to see that they're going to be adding that stuff in, because I think that was the biggest thing missing from it for me. That seems really odd, especially now that we've got like multiverses coming out next year with all like Batman and like Game of Thrones people, and they're bringing back loads of like famous actors and stuff for that. So I think fighting games, especially ones like Smash, need like cool voice acting and taunts and stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna give this game a go at some point, and once it has crossplay, it will probably be more worthwhile because I'll just be able to play it with whoever. Right, so yeah.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. Very surprising that they're able to go back and do that because, I could have totally seen this as like they dropped it and just left it, but it's cool to see they're going back to add such, like a big component of the game. You don't really see that, so that's cool. Anyways, a long-awaited announcement has finally dropped as of last week, and I did not expect it to be via a Twitter post, but Ubisoft has finally announced a new Splinter Cell game, and in particular, this is going to be a Splinter Cell remake. The way they announced this is very, very early. It definitely seems like after the NFT, buzz they had of, negative press, they kind of needed some press out there that, like, saw them, like, in the light, like, in a positive light from, like, the hardcore audience, right? So they essentially just said, we're hard at work on a Splinter Cell remake. It's almost kind of like a hiring kind of tweet, because they wanted people to join their team. I believe this is Ubisoft Toronto that's doing this. I could be wrong. But yeah, very, very early in development. Very surprised that it's only just now that they're talking about this. I've always assumed that this game was going to be something that we saw like even like 5 years ago. But nonetheless, here we are in 2021, the very tail end of it, and they finally announced this. Yeah, just very, very happy, obviously. They did also announce some more details regarding this game, because a lot of people initially were kind of skeptical that it could be like an open world game, and they did confirm that it's going to be linear. I think I even tweeted about this. I wasn't surprised the Splinter Cell remake was happening, but I was surprised to hear it's linear, just because when's the last time we've seen a game like that come out from Ubisoft, besides like maybe Mario Rabbids? So yeah, I'm very, very happy with that news. Charlie, what'd you think?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this turns out. I saw people immediately jumping the gun, like you said, and go, "Oh my god, this is gonna suck. It's gonna be open world and stuff." And I think that was partially due to, I think literally like a week before this announcement, there was a ton of rumors about an open world Splinter Cell game getting like basically pitched and going into production. And from what because it was Tom Henderson that was talking about it, from what he said, there are currently like two, or I guess three Splinter Cell projects in the works right now. So you've got the VR game, which they're working on here in the UK, which they've been working alongside the Assassin's Creed game. Then you've got this remake that's just entered production. And then he says that there is also like a new Splinter Cell, like open world style, kind of like Metal Gear 5 style open world, where you've got like mini areas, right, that are semi-open. So yeah, I think you're still gonna get an open world like Splinter Cell game. It's just it will be a new title, right? Which I think is the best way to do it, because you're pleasing like the classic fans with a remake of a really beloved game, and you'll probably bring in a lot more fans. I've never played the original Splinter Cell, so I'm definitely interested in picking this up whenever it comes out. I'm sure it's probably 2-3 years away at this point. But I'm also really excited to see whatever they do with new Splinter Cell style stuff. So it's cool to see Ubisoft are finally dipping back into that. Hopefully this means Prince of Persia is finally gonna come back at some point. That's the one series I really want them to go back to. Obviously Sands of Time is still meant to be happening, but who knows what happened to that remake. So yeah, we'll see about that one. I do think the announcement has a lot to do with a lot of their staff leaving recently. That was a big thing of the a lot of the higher up staff were either leaving or being fired for a multitude of reasons, and it seems like they did this announcement to try and get more people to actually want to join the team, because I think they've really been struggling to hire people since all of the allegations and stuff. So it's cool to see they announced it, but the way it was announced and the reason why seems kind of scummy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still interested to see how the game turns out. I still enjoy Ubisoft games, and that's like none of the stuff going on is going to stop that for me. Obviously, screw Ubisoft and the way they treat their staff, but I'm still excited to see what projects they actually work on. So
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's a PR move more than anything. I guarantee you, the
Yeah.
next time we see like an official announcement of anything Splinter Cell related, it'll probably be like the open world one or the VR one. And the reason they announced this is because they wanted to make sure that like the next time they talk about Splinter Cell, it probably won't be the remake, so that if people like
Yeah.
initially saw like open world, that'd be very very bad press, or even if it was VR, that would still piss a lot of people off. So yeah, that was probably why they did that, alongside obviously wanting good PR. Besides, the news that has just been out, with Ubisoft entering NFTs and everything else in between with all the allegations and stuff. So yeah, I'm still skeptical, but it's not a bad idea to announce it this way, I guess. I definitely think they're doing some smart things with the IP. I'm surprised they're like investing so much to do like 3 projects with it. But I think it's smart to venture off into VR and see how Splinter Cell VR game would look. Something like Aspire 1, or, but like actually good. That'd be really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously doing the traditional game to see how much of an audience that has to this day. And as well as just doing the traditional open world game, which obviously is probably the least exciting project in my eyes. But like it could still be quality, right? Like it is Ubisoft, so I don't think it will be, but it could still be quality. Yeah, if they just give it some time and just try not to, you know, essentially just rush out a product like that, like what they do with like half of the Far Cries, then it could be pretty cool. Like if they do like Metal Gear Solid style, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, Charlie, did you also want to talk about this next news story regarding a beloved game that we're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, so a smaller announcement here, but the Annacrusis, which is a game coming from Chet Falasek, who was the kind of like lead writer on Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, as well as a writer on like Half-Life 2, Episode 1 and 2, and Portal 2. He's basically, he opened his own studio a few years back, and hired some ex-Valve staff and a load of other people, and he's been working on this new 4-player cooperative, like, shooter, kind of like Left 4 Dead, but like a 60s sci-fi kind of thing, against aliens. They did show it off at the Xbox event in the summer, which it looked okay, but it's had some more footage more recently because they've been doing a ton of playtests. I myself haven't gotten to play it. I am signed up on their Discord, but they usually do tests like really late at night for me, so I haven't been able to play it. But it looks a lot more promising from more recent footage, and it's entering early access next month on the 13th of January. But the cool thing about it is it's going to be on Game Pass for both Xbox and PC on day one. So much like Back 4 Blood, they've managed to get another one of these 4-player co-op games on there. But it's going to have like modding support from day one, which Back 4 Blood obviously didn't have. And it's going to be getting a lot of consistent free updates. I think they've got a decent chunk of maps right now, but they're obviously going to be releasing a lot more. And because there's mod support from day one, I think there's also a ton of custom maps that people have already been making during the playtests and stuff, because they've been giving modders access to the game already, which is really cool. So there's going to be a ton of like extra content already there on day one. So it's one I'm definitely looking forward to checking out. I think one of the weakest parts of Back 4 Blood was like the dialogue and stuff just wasn't on par with Left 4 Dead. And obviously with having like the lead writer from those games writing this, I'm really hoping that it's going to be funny and stylish. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it could be really cool. So it's only less than a month away, like 3 weeks, and I'll definitely be checking this one out.
Yeah, the date is pretty cool. January 13th. That's like the start of the new year, the second week, pretty much, or third. That's awesome. Definitely looking forward to trying that out on Game Pass, just like Back 4 Blood. So that's awesome. Anyways, cool update that Sony did. That's kind of been long awaited here, as they finally announced some PlayStation covers. This has been like in the news ever since the PS5 has come out. You'd always hear about these other companies, third party, getting like either trademarked or something by Sony to like stop their business or something. And people would always complain because, rightfully so, Sony hasn't really entered that market yet. So there really was no other alternative up until now. So yeah, this was kind of like a 2-part announcement they did. They announced some new colors for the controllers, which totals up to 5 now, and then of course all 5 of those colors are going to be able to have a variant of the PlayStation colors. So I guess I'll just give all the colors now as they are. There's Midnight Black, Cosmic Red, Nova Pink, Starlight Blue, and Galactic Purple. So the ones that we already had was Midnight Black and Cosmic Red. Those two colors were announced, I believe, in June, around the time of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, because I believe they came out like alongside those. Those are two other colors. So obviously with the base color white, that was three colors, and then now adding in Nova Pink, Starlight Blue, and Galactic Purple. Now we have a total of really 6 colors you could have if you count the base white color, right? So looks really, really cool. Probably include an image here, the face covers that they have. Yeah, pretty much you can match them with your controller color, which I think looks really, really good. As for me, I'll probably maybe pick up a black cover for my PS5. I think that would look really, really cool. And it also just looks like traditional PlayStation, right? I'm always someone that likes my stuff, my tech at least kind of black and low key, right? So that'd be pretty, really cool, but I haven't really locked in a decision yet. So yeah, it looks like those are going to be starting here in January, so not too much of a wait. Charlie, what'd you think about this?
Yeah, I think they look really cool. I'm kind of on the fence about whether to get one or not, right? Like, I'm typically, like, I really like the color red. That's kind of my thing. And I didn't pick up the red controller because I wasn't a fan of the red they used. And I'm still not with the cover, so I probably won't pick that up. But I am on the fence for getting, like, the Midnight Black, right? Just so it looks like all the other PlayStation consoles, because I do have the black controller. I don't have it on hand, but like that's yeah, that's the way I'll go if I do get one. But I'm still not sure whether I will or not. I think they're like $50, right? I think they're like £45 over here, so it's pretty
Yeah.
expensive for 2 bits of plastic. So like we'll see. I'm not sure whether I'll get it or not, but I'll wait till nearer the time and probably decide then.
Yeah, as it is, I still have yet to buy the internal SSD as well. I have been kind of slacking on that. Just a hard pill to swallow, like over $100 for extra storage, even though I desperately need it. We'll see, we'll see. But very, very cool to see at least them announce that and give you options. So very, very nice. Anyways, our final news story is kind of a cool update. So yeah, whenever Rockstar really drops these new GT Online updates, I kind of look the other side just because I'm kind of done with the game. But this one looks really, really cool. It's actually already out. And it includes Franklin, which is the first ever. I think they've done some small character appearances like Trevor and stuff in the past, but this is like the first real big GT Online update that they've had that reincorporates one of the three trio, characters, obviously from the original game. Obviously, this being Franklin. They also have an artist, Dr. Dre, in it, which is really, really cool to see such a big name like that. I'm forgetting the name of the update. Let me look up the name of the update right now, but it looks like it is. Let's see here. Okay, I can't find the name of the update, but I'll look for it right here. But it looks pretty cool. I've talked to my brother because my brother still plays GT Online update. Still plays GT Online on like a daily basis with his friends, which is pretty cool to see. I've seen parts of the gameplay because he has shown me some stuff, and it does look really, really cool. You can like pet the dog Chomp, which I really, really wanted to see. That was the first thing I really had a question on is Chomp, because obviously you gotta love the dog from the base single player game. But it's still very, really, really cool to see. It sucks that it is such a heavily restricted to GTA Online update. I still desperately want them to jump back into the story side of GTA. But obviously it's kind of well over past its time. It's like, what, 8 years now since the game originally came out? And now that they're doing the remaster, they're probably just going to work on GTA 6 now, which rightfully so they should. But still very, very cool to see. So as I look for the name of the update, what'd you think about this update, Charlie?
Yeah, it looks interesting. It's just it's online, right? So I'm probably never gonna play this. For a whole multitude of reasons. I think the main one being like I hate the idea that you have to like pay in-game money to like play all these missions and stuff. Like I always hated that. But I mean, it looks cool seeing all these characters come back. I do know people were saying it was kind of odd for those who haven't played in ages because apparently like online timeline wise was set before GTA 5 and now it's set after GTA 5.
It's weird,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's cool. Like it canonizes like some of the ending or one of the endings for 5, right? And having Franklin come back with like I guess his wife now and kids. I think Lamar's in it as well, and I think
Yeah,
there's co-op
Lamar's
missions
also
where
in
you
it.
play as both of them
I think at the
instead of your
end, yeah, you
character.
can.
So
Hmm.
yeah, it's cool. I just wish it wasn't online so I could check it out. But I mean, I not that I have GTA 5 or anything installed. Maybe when the
Can
PS5
you update?
version eventually comes out, maybe I'll eventually play it. But um, yeah, I'm not like super bothered about it. I guess whilst we're on Rockstar, I might as well talk about Bully because I didn't put this on here. I don't know if you heard about Bully 2 or anything, but
I
like
have
there was
not.
some like rumors and stuff. Um, so basically, Tom Henderson started tweeting out the other week that he'd been hearing that a lot of journalists were shown footage of Bully 2 before
What
the
the
Game
fuck?
Awards.
Oh,
And a lot of them were actually made to sign NDAs, like you typically are, so that they can get articles ready and stuff for posting about it. And they
damn.
apparently a lot of them expected it to be a surprise drop at the Game Awards, but then it never happened. So now a lot of journalists are kind of confused about what's going on because they were obviously showing this footage expecting it to get announced and it still hasn't been. Um, Adding to the fire of this, one of like the editors from Game Informer tweeted a picture of the insignia of the school from Bully, basically saying new story coming to you soon, and he used the number 2 instead. So people were like, oh, so you know about Bully 2 then? And then somebody else from Game Informer, I think it was Alex Stadnick or something, was like, oh no, this isn't what he means. Like, but it's kind of like, why would you post that? It's really weird. Um, so yeah, everyone's a little confused right now. It seems like something was meant to happen with Bully, and then Rockstar either pulled out or there was a bit of confusion with the press and stuff. So maybe we'll see it about this soon. I know there was like it was cancelled at one point, and it seems to have gone back into development again. So who knows what's going on there? But it seems like Bully 2 is actually happening, which is an odd one to say, but
That is odd, yeah.
yeah, a small little like piece of from the rumor mill, I guess.
God, that's really like surprising for me. I never really thought they'd touch Bully again. Uh, just because I don't know, Rockstar now is like a very different company. I thought
Yeah,
they were like big on GTA now, and to a certain extent, maybe we'll get like a Red Dead Redemption remaster at some point. But that is very surprising, especially considering if a bunch of press have already seen it. You can't imagine that it's far off, right? Like they wouldn't show the press if this announcement wasn't like in
exactly.
the
Yeah,
coming months. So this is something that probably is like a December, no, not December, but January announcement here. If it is true, obviously it's still a rumor. I did actually not hear about that, so that's very surprising. I'd love that to be true. That'd be very, very exciting. Right now, there's not really a reason to be excited from Rockstar right now for me,
yeah,
because really, it's like all they've announced right now are like remasters of old GTA games, and that's really it. Like, obviously, we know GTA 6 is bound to happen, but like, given the success of GTA Online, that doesn't need to happen very, very soon. Like, it could be a 2025 release, and that'd still be fine. So yeah, I'll take that for sure. A new game from Rockstar is always exciting. It's interesting. I wonder how that project would look, how big in scope it would be, because like, coming from like an open world Red Dead Redemption 2, how the hell do you like top yourself with the bully game, right? Like, I don't know what the scale of that game is gonna be, but you can't imagine it's bigger than Red Dead 2. If it is, I'd be very surprised. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this now. That's very exciting. And yeah, very, very cool. I also did find the name of that update, by the way. It is called GT Online The Contract. So, yeah,
oh,
very,
cool.
very cool. I did also hear that, yeah, there is a mission at the very end, or two, that you play as Franklin and Lamar, which is kind of nostalgic, right? So, that's very, very cool to see. I think that update in general has, like, new heist and stuff like that, maybe, or something like that. I saw my brother playing a new heist like that, or something of the sort. So, that's really, really cool to see. Anyways, that's it for the gaming news. Obviously, the fact that like we're recording this on Christmas Eve, like yeah, we're in the time period right now where all the studios are closed right now, and everyone's enjoying their holiday break, which is to be expected. So yeah, it is gonna be a little bit light on gaming news. We will be talking about our favorite games of the year next week on our next podcast, so I look forward to that. And yeah. Anyways, it is time to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. Charlie and I have both seen the movie. I've seen the movie twice. How many times have you seen it, Charlie?
Twice. Yeah.
Twice as well. Cool. So yeah, we definitely have some strong thoughts on that. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. So I guess Charlie, you can start us off with your thoughts on the movie. Kind of like talk about like what you did to prepare for the movie, because I know you watched like the old Raimi movies, right? Maybe all of them in general. So yeah, just give your thoughts overall.
Yeah. So I mean, I might as well start by saying like what I think of the other films, right? So I grew
Yeah,
up with
give
the
us
Raimi
context.
films. Like I absolutely adore those films, especially Spider-Man 2. Like it's one of my favorite films of all time. I've seen it way too many times to count. with the Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man films, I still enjoy those. I think Andrew Garfield is a great Spider-Man. And I enjoyed watching those. The first one I preferred to the second one, but I still think they're both decent films. And when it comes to Tom Holland's films, whilst I think they're okay, they're definitely not my favorites. I've never been a massive fan of his like portrayal of Spider-Man, right? Like I wasn't a fan of the whole Iron Boy Jr. type thing, right? It was never my thing. I do enjoy Homecoming to a degree, although I rewatched them all before seeing No Way Home. And I've got to say, I didn't enjoy rewatching Homecoming that much. And I started off being pretty negative on Far From Home, but upon rewatching it, I actually quite enjoyed the film. I don't think it's like the best Spider-Man film or anything. I think it's way more of like a teen
different kind of film
flick than it is anything else. And they've said that multiple times, like they wanted it to be like the Ferris Bueller Day Off of the MCU, and it very much comes across as that. And I think it does a good job of that. But as a Spider-Man film, I don't think it's particularly strong, but it leaves it on a really cool note leading into this film. So that was kind of my preparation. But overall, I absolutely loved No Way Home. I think it's probably my favorite Spider-Man film. I don't know for sure. I feel like I need to see it way more times to decide that. But after 2 viewings, I think it's really, really good. I think it perfectly nails Spider-Man. I think Tom Holland is like fantastic in the film. It's the best he's done with the role. It just nails everything about the mythos of Spider-Man and what it means to be that character, and the stuff they do with the story is so good. I'm really excited to see what else they do with Spider-Man now. Like it leaves it in a like perfect place for me where it almost feels like this is the origin, right? For his Spider-Man. It may have taken 3 films to get there, but it's like a perfect origin for him. So I'm really excited to see where, if Tom does keep playing Spider-Man, where he takes the character. And I think it might be one of my favorite MCU films. I don't know for certain. I think my favorites would be like Winter Soldier and Endgame. So I don't know where I would place it up there, but it's got to be at least in the top 3 for me, I think. But yeah, I think overall it's a fantastic film. There's not much negative I can say about it, to be honest. So yeah.
Nice. I have very similar thoughts. I guess I'll give my context. I grew up with the Raimi films. Like as a kid, I've always watched like Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. Particularly on number 1 and 2 the most, just because those are the movies I rewatched over and over again as a kid. Especially 2 with Doc Ock. That was like my childhood. I even had like figurines, I think, as a kid of Doc Ock. The Amazing Spider-Man I thought was alright. I never really like clicked with it. Viewing it now, I definitely see Andrew as a really good Spider-Man. I think he's probably the most well acted. But those movies, I just really never saw him as Peter Parker, just because he was always like really good at everything. It didn't really seem like a kid that had it rough, if that makes any sense. And then going into, obviously, Tom Holland's movies, I have a really weird relationship because it was like so long since I saw the Raimi films when I watched the Tom Holland trilogy. And I really enjoyed the movies as like just in general, like MCU movies, right? I thought they were funny. I thought they were like decently well paced, and I thought they were fun movies to watch. But when I rewatched the Raimi films, there's something that you notice of like just how much Tobey Maguire goes through and how it really means to be Spider-Man is like living a shitty life where you can never win. You always have to make sacrifices, and that's kind of what it means to be Peter Parker, right? And to be Spider-Man. And you never really had that feeling with the Homecoming and Far From Home. With especially Far From Home, it really didn't feel like Spider-Man at all. Like it seemed like I think you put it best, it's like a teen flick, right? Where it's a very different MCU movie. Homecoming I liked because obviously I still thought it had some cool aspects of obviously, his girlfriend, dad being the Vulture, right? And having that kind of be a dilemma. It was still very shallow compared to what Tobey Maguire has to go through in his trilogy, which we later see in No Way Home, but still decent. But No Way Home kind of essentially was like the saving grace of the trilogy that kind of like addressed the problems that people had with Far From Home and Homecoming. First of all, I want to say, like, on a second viewing, this movie is really, really paced well. Like, I was watching it a second time, and while I rewatched, like, Endgame, which is also one of my favorite MCU movies, that movie isn't really well paced at all. It really feels like an event that you watch it once, and, like, you can still watch it over and over again, right? But it's, like, very hard to watch in that sense if you know what's coming, just because a lot of that stuff doesn't hit well on a second viewing, and especially because it's like, what, 3 hours long. But No Way Home is the opposite. Like, this movie is really well paced. It's really fun to watch multiple times. I think in terms of what they do with the characters, I was very surprised that this was not only like a really nostalgic movie of bringing back Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, but it's also just a really good movie for Peter Parker and Tom Holland in general, right? Like, it addresses so much of his character. He grows so much over the course of this film in terms of the decision he has to make at the very end, and which ultimately is very exciting for the future of this character, right? But it just kind of like fires on all cylinders, I think. I really, really like the fact that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is the one that is changing Peter Parker for the MCU. I really, really like that as well. So many good scenes between all three of the Spider-Mans. I'm really glad that like Tom Holland, his version of Peter Parker, knows that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield exist. That's awesome. Just knowing the legacy of those characters, right, and being able to make decisions going forward, knowing those characters exist out there. Yeah, it's like honestly really hard to convey my thoughts because there's just so much that this movie does that I really like. Yeah, man, it's just very, really good. Like the last 10 minutes of just seeing him go into an apartment that is very reminiscent of the Tobey Maguire trilogy, you know, him having to pay rent now by himself, losing Aunt May, which we haven't talked about yet as well. Yeah, there's just so much that he just kind of steps out of being Iron Man Jr. and finally really feels like he's up there, you know, in terms of the Spider-Mans and can actually be called Spider-Man, right? So, yeah, just a bunch of thoughts out there. Did you want to talk about anything else you haven't talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think Willem Dafoe, if anything, is stronger in this film than he is in Spider-Man 1. Like, I love him as Green Goblin. I think he's great, but in this film, he really gets to actually express himself. I think losing the mask was probably the best decision they could have made for his character.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many good shots of him. Like, that fight in the apartment building is so good. Like, when
He
they're
almost
in the
felt like the
hallway.
Joker.
Yeah, and he's like, and Pete's just like completely bashing his face in, right? And he just turns
Mm.
around and he's just laughing at him. Like, oh, it's just so good. There's so many great scenes between those two. And you can tell that Willem just brought out the best in Tom, like bringing that character to life. Um, yeah, it was so cool to see him come back. I think it was cool to see everyone come back, to be honest. I do think like Sandman and Lizard were kind of
Weak.
underutilized for a
Yeah.
number of reasons. I think the number one thing is they weren't on set. I think that the two scenes they actually you see them as the actors, they're actually taken from their films. So when Sandman turns back into Flint, that is from Spider-Man 3. And
Yeah.
when Connors turns back into Connors, that is taken from Amazing Spider-Man, right? So, because when I watched those scenes, because I just rewatched like a few days before those films, like I was like, those scenes look familiar, and then looking online, people are like, oh yeah, that's why they're not in the rest of the film, right? Because they weren't on set. They just did VO for those characters. But those two are definitely weaker compared to everyone else. I'm still kind of like 50-50 on Jamie Foxx as Electro. Like, I actually like some of the scenes he's got in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think it's a cool take on the character. But they basically pull like a complete 180. He's like completely different in this film.
Yeah.
Like he's suddenly all like cool. He's basically just Jamie Foxx,
He's cool.
but he
Yeah, I
has
was gonna say he's
electro
pretty much Jamie
powers.
Foxx. Yeah.
He's basically just Jamie Foxx, which I think works. He's meant to be kind of like the humor for the bad guys, right? Like he is there just to crack jokes with everyone, which I think works quite well. I really like what they do with Otto. Like I think he's great. The way
Oh
that
yeah.
they fix his inhibitor chip and that scene when he comes back and
And he
he's
helps him
suddenly
out. Yeah.
yeah, and he can just like he's like oh the voices are gone and that kind of thing. Like it's all done so well. I think everyone just fits back into their roles so well. Like after
Hmm.
nearly 20 years, and they can still like just like that. Like they've got the roles back right. And then obviously Toby and Andrew seeing them come back, even though I'm pretty sure most of us knew going in they were going to be there, right? Like from all the leaks and things.
Yeah.
It was still like something crazy to see them on screen again. Just speaking lines like the way they introduce them I think is perfect, like Andrew coming out like in his suit and then Toby just casually just stepping through a portal, like he's like oh hi how's it going. Like he's just super shy like he is in those
I
original
know.
movies.
So awkward. Yeah.
It's just done so well and the chemistry between them is also good. I think the scene where they're all just doing all the sciencey stuff is also like great. It's just more Peter Parker-y stuff that you just don't really get in Tom's films. So I really enjoyed all of that. And obviously the final battle's great as well, particularly the fight with Tom and Willem, right? Like that fight is really well done. Um, just some of the lines are so good as well. Like Willem just feel like, oh, poor Peter, like not strong enough to kill me. He's like, no, because I'm gonna kill you myself. He's like, oh shit, like it's about to go down. But yeah, it's just so good. There's not enough praise I can give that film, so I definitely want to see it again in the cinema before it goes away. Because it's one of those films like I know I want to see on the big screen as much as I can. But that we are potentially going back into lockdown like next week, so I kind of hope it doesn't happen so I can see it again, but we'll see.
Yeah, just so many good things about this film. It's crazy that this was made by, the same team that worked on Far From Home and Homecoming. Like, they really understand Spider-Man, but it didn't seem like, I don't know if this is their goal for the whole trilogy, was to explore a younger Peter Parker before he, like, really took on the mantle. Because as you see with, like, the Aunt May scene where she delivers the line, it's almost like they wanted
Oh yeah.
Peter Parker to become Spider-Man with the third movie in this trilogy all along or something like that. But, yeah, it's very interesting. It's crazy to consider how much Peter has lost at the very end of No Way Home, because obviously he lost Tony Stark just recently with Endgame, and then obviously, Aunt May dies in this film, so that's pretty much leaving him, without any like mentor role models. And then obviously the big hitter at the very end is the fact that no one knows he exists, so he's essentially just living in New York City. No one knows he exists, and as he chooses to like leave his friends behind because he doesn't want to ruin their lives again. By incorporating them with him. So I think that's a very, very exciting way to leave, Tom Holland's version of Peter Parker. Definitely also seemed like a way for them to end the series in case they never ended up making another deal with Sony, right? Like that was that like if there was a movie to end Spider-Man with, that's kind of like the one to end it on, right? Because that's like, you can literally do whatever you want with Spider-Man going forward now. You can like not continue in the MCU and it would make sense because obviously and no one knows who Peter Parker is anymore. But also you could still like create new stories with like Harry Osborn, and you could still incorporate him in the MCU in clever ways going forward. So yeah, it's like almost anyone's guess can be true now. Like, who will be the next villain be? Venom, Kingpin? No one really knows, right? It's pretty exciting. Yeah, what do you think the future is going to be for, Tom Holland's version? Do you think it's going to be him going forward? Do you believe the rumors that they might go back to Andrew?
I think it could be a mix of both, right? Like I don't know what their plans are for Andrew and stuff. I'd love to see him, get to do more. I don't think we'll ever get like an Amazing Spider-Man 3. I just don't think Sony will ever want to do that for a multitude of reasons, but I just don't think it would ever work having two like separate Spider-Man stories that are both, Peter Parker on screen at the same sort of time. Not because I wouldn't want it, it's more just because of casual audiences, and I think it would get a bit too
Yeah.
confusing. Um, and also, there's a reason they didn't make Amazing Spider-Man 3. At the time, those films didn't do particularly well compared to the other Spider-Man films and the other Marvel films going on at the time. So that's the main reason why they never did a third one. But I'd love to see Andrew come back. There are rumors that he has signed on to do other things, whether that is his own film or to show up in other crossovers. I really hope so. I don't think we'll ever see Toby again. From what they were saying way back when, like it was an absolute ball ache to get him to come back for this film, let alone for more stuff, right? So I imagine this is the last we see of him. He doesn't really do much acting these days anyway, so it's just cool to see him on screen again. Um, I definitely think they're gonna do at least another film with Tom. Obviously, before it even came out, like Amy Pascal, who's like the lead producer on these things over at Sony, was saying that they're planning a new trilogy with him. Um, Her and Kevin Feige were saying they're already starting plans for the fourth one, and I know Tom has been saying stuff like, "Oh, he thinks he might be done with it and he wants to settle down and like start a family and stuff." But let's be real, all actors say that so they get more money. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if they say that stuff, producers suddenly go, "Oh, hang on a second, he doesn't want to do it. I guess we'll have to give him more money." So, it's all just tactics at the end of the day.
Hard to
I
get.
wouldn't like. He loves playing the role. If that was me, there's no way I'd ever turn down coming back for something like that. So, yeah, I definitely think it will happen. Where I think they'll go with it, I definitely think Gwen and Harry are definitely going to be introduced. I think that's where they'll go next with it. We do see at the end he's doing like study stuff, right? Like he's doing those tests to get into
GED
college and
test,
stuff.
yeah.
Because obviously nobody knows who he is, so he's going to have to do all that stuff again. So I definitely think he'll end up going to like a college in New York, and he'll meet Gwen and Harry because that is how he meets them in the comics through college. Um, I do think they'll still do stuff with Ned and MJ. I think they're like I wasn't too keen on them in some of the other films, but I think they're really funny and like just they like hit off each other really well, those three. So it would be a shame to just lose them. And I'm sure they'll come back into the equation at some point. I know there were rumors that Ned would become like Hobgoblin.
There's
Because
no
Ned
way he's
does.
gonna become a villain this like
Well,
soon.
I don't think it would be this soon, but he does become the Hobgoblin in the comics, even though Ned is not really the same as he is in the comics. But I wouldn't be surprised if they take that direction. Because obviously they don't know who Peter is now. Maybe MJ will end up falling in love with Pete again down the line, and Ned will get jealous or something, and they'll have like a Harry Osborn type Spider-Man 3 rivalry type thing.
I have a question. Was it implied at the very end of No Way Home that Ned and MJ were together, or were they just friends?
I think they were just friends. At first, I thought maybe they were together or something.
So I saw some people
Because when
think
they
that
walk
like
through
Ned took his girl.
walk through the
Yeah.
door, but I don't think that's what they're implying. I think they
Okay, I was
might go
gonna say.
down that direction just to create like a weird love triangle hexagon thing with all the characters.
God, that'd be
Because
weird.
that's what Peter Parker is all about. Like having all these weird relationship issues going on whilst he's trying to juggle being a superhero. Like that's part of the character. So I could definitely see them doing that. Who I think they'd have as the next villain, I definitely think it's going to be much smaller scale because obviously it's going to be hard to top something like this, like so soon after. Um, I'd really like them to do Craven. That was originally the plan for this film if the multiverse stuff couldn't happen. So, like, they've probably got drafts of, some form of script with Craven. Whether they'll do that, because I know they are doing like a Craven film with the Sony stuff that isn't MCU related. So, who knows whether they will do that as a film.
They
But I
teased
think that would be
Venom,
really
but who
cool.
knows?
They tease Venom. I don't know if that's like a next film type
But
thing,
they
or
also
whether
teased
they'll
in like at the end of Homecoming. They teased what Scorpion, but that never happened.
Scorpion and stuff, and that didn't really happen. Yeah, so I don't know. I think they just want to set up a lot of things. If they do Venom, I hope they don't rush it because I think both times they've tried to do Venom haven't really hit too well for me. So, like, I'd like to see them do it successfully. Who they would give the symbiote to and stuff, because obviously, would it be a new version of Eddie Brock? I'd feel bad for Tom Hardy if that was the case. Because like he's worked really hard on this character, and if he just gets thrown to the sidelines, right? Because they've got a new Eddie Brock in the MCU, that'd be a shame. So I don't know what they'd want to do with that, but I'd be really interested to see what the symbiote does in these films, and how they use it. But yeah, I don't know. There's not really any other villains I can think of that I'd really want to see because like when
We
they
can't do
did
really Green
Homecoming
Goblin
and
again because
yeah, it
we
has to
kind of already
be.
seen him.
I think it always has to be people they haven't done before. Like I think they did a good job of that with Homecoming and Far From Home. I would have never thought of doing Vulture or even Mysterio to a great extent, right? And I think they both turned out pretty well. I enjoyed Vulture, and I think Mysterio was a little bit weaker, but I really like Jake Gyllenhaal as that villain. So, whatever they do, I'm interested to see what it is. But I think a smaller scale villain is really what they need to do again now.
I'd like a smaller scale trilogy. Like I'd like to see Tom Holland tackle like I don't know if like fully he'd be like disconnected from the Avengers or something like that, but like you'd imagine at least that first movie would be him by himself. I definitely want to see at least a movie
Yeah.
where he's in college by himself doing stuff that essentially was like the last 10 minutes of the film, but for like a full feature film at least. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with things. I mean, like if they do introduce like Harry and stuff, they have a really cool avenue they can go down with that because currently Oscorp doesn't exist in the MCU. This film basically confirmed that.
Yeah.
Because obviously they mentioned Norman Osborn a lot,
And he's like, my company doesn't
he doesn't
exist,
bat an
yeah.
eyelid about it. So Oscorp doesn't exist. I'd be interested to see if maybe Harry starts Oscorp in this, right? And Norman doesn't really exist. He just has a normal dad, and it turns out Harry is going to start Oscorp or something. That would be really cool.
That'd be cool.
I don't know how they do all that, because if he's like, oh, I'm Harry Osborn, and then he suddenly goes, hang on a second, didn't I fight Norman? Or like if Gwen shows up, hang on a second, didn't you die like with the other
Yeah,
Spider-Man? Like, so I
it's
don't
gonna
know
be very weird.
how they'll
Yeah,
tackle stuff like that, and if they do eventually bring in like a new version of Otto or a new version of Kurt Connors, how does that work? Because he kind of knows those people from other universes now, so it's going to be
that's what's really
interesting to see what they
interesting.
do.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think this is the most like excited I've been about Marvel stuff in a while. Because after Endgame, I wasn't super excited about anything, but after this film, I'm just excited to see where they go with Spider-Man. And honestly, I'm excited to see Doctor Strange as well, just for the
I want to see if they
repercussions of this
answer
film and
anything
stuff.
with Doctor Strange. Yeah,
Yeah,
if they
because
like.
there's been a lot of rumors that there's going to be a lot of like cameo stuff from like the Fox films and things in that. So,
Mhm.
um, I'm interested to see how that does multiverse stuff as well. And like you said, if that has more explanations for what's going on from the end of Spider-Man and things. So, and plus it's
Yeah,
directed by Sam Raimi, which would be cool to see him do another superhero film since Spider-Man 3.
exactly.
So, um, yeah, I'm super excited about the future of like Spider-Man and Marvel in general right now, to be honest. So.
They have a lot of avenues that can go down. Like the ending they did was like pretty much perfect. Like I don't
Mhm.
see how they could have had a better ending than that. And honestly, like they kept it so open ended. Very sad, but like just very really cool, full of potential where they can go next. Very very exciting stuff. Yeah, Doctor Strange will be really really cool just to see. You know, obviously, I think he's like one of my favorite characters still. I think honestly, Peter and Strange are like two of my favorite characters right now in the MCU of like the Face, right? Ever since obviously we lost look at what Captain America, Iron Man, and Endgame, and also Black Widow. It's really really cool to be excited for things again. Even like to a certain extent, I wonder how the Loki show ends because they also talked about like the multiverse in that show, but we haven't really seen any repercussions of Loki happen yet. I'm guessing they're gonna save that for Ant-Man because obviously we already know that they're gonna have some connections there, right? It's interesting. I want to see how these things connect because there's like so many things they've started in some of the Disney Plus shows. I haven't fully watched Hawkeye, but I know they've added some stuff that could potentially be used for future Spider-Man films based on the ending of the Hawkeye show. So, yeah, looks like Marvel's finally getting a bit more exciting again. I haven't watched Shang-Chi. That's definitely on my list. It's now on Disney Plus. I should do that. I've heard good things, and I haven't seen Eternals either. But yeah, did you watched Eternals or Shang-Chi?
Yeah, I saw both of those at the cinema. I enjoyed Shang-Chi. I think it gets a bit weaker in the second half, but I still really enjoyed it. Eternals, I was going in with really low expectations because I didn't like the look of the trailers. And the reviews didn't get me too excited either. But it was okay. It wasn't like anything special. I think that's coming to Disney Plus next month, so I guess you don't have to wait too long to watch that either. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
recommend Shang-Chi. I enjoyed it. I think they go like at the start it's very much like traditional like kung fu films and they do a lot more practical stuff, whereas in the second half there's a lot more like CG stuff going on and it just didn't interest me as much. It got a bit more generic. So but I really enjoyed like Simu Liu as Shang-Chi and stuff. I think he was really cool. So I enjoyed that one more than Eternals, I think.
Right on, right on. Definitely got to do that. I might watch that maybe even today or something. I've been wanting to watch that over the break, especially after Spider Man. I definitely want to watch that. But yeah, I guess that leaves us off with No Way Home. And yeah, do you say anything that you haven't said yet, or do we want to end it?
I think that's basically it. I guess the other only like cool thing in there that I could briefly mention was Daredevil. Him coming back was awesome.
Oh yeah,
I absolutely love that show. So having him back in the MCU is really cool. Obviously, there is stuff in Hawkeye that also does kind of set up some stuff with particular villains. I won't say anything. But like yeah, so I'm interested to see what they do with him in the future. I hope it has when they do bring him back, it has the same tone and stuff of the shows. Because Hawkeye gets me a little bit worried that maybe it won't have the same tone. It'll be a bit more dumbed down, but I really hope not. Because I think that's why Daredevil worked so well, as it was so like gritty and like realistic in a way. Even though it's superheroes, I think it was a bit more down to earth, and I think it worked really well for the show. So I'm glad to see that Charlie Cox is back in the role because he's perfect casting for that character. So that was a cool little cameo that they had in there as well. But other than that, I think that's basically it.
Dude, they own Fox, like all the characters, right? Because they're doing Fantastic Four, so they could
They're
do
doing them,
another
yeah.
like Deadpool movie, right, or something in the
They've
MCU.
already said they're doing Deadpool 3. I think they're meant to be filming it
Okay.
next year, but they haven't really
Okay.
said too much.
And
They
that'll
I
be an
think they
MCU movie, or that's gonna be a Deadpool 3 like by itself, like what
they've
Venom
said
2
it's
is and stuff like that.
MCU, but how it'll work, they haven't really said. It's still going to be Ryan Reynolds and stuff, so I'm sure it'll just be filled with tons of really meta stuff and him complaining
MCU
about
related
like the
stuff.
Fox merger and why he's lost all his friends and that kind of thing. Um,
That'd be funny.
I'm interested to see how that turns out. They've also said that's going to keep its R rating, like they can't really do it without an R rating, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how they do an R-rated Marvel movie from
MCU
Disney
movie. That's
because
cool.
that hasn't been done yet. So hopefully it keeps the same like raunchiness and stuff of those first two films because I enjoyed those for what they were. So especially the first one. But yeah,
Yeah, I thought Deadpool was cool. I still want a Deadpool Spider-Man movie. That'd be sick. I don't know how you do that
I
now,
mean,
considering
maybe
like,
it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen.
yeah, there's like they have a like a long future because like if you even think about like how Miles has yet to appear in the MCU, which I don't want him to be introduced for a while because I still want to get
No.
like a proper college trilogy with Tom Holland still. Uh, yeah, there's definitely a good decade's worth of material going forward for at least Spider-Man alone. So yeah, it's cool to see them like we're going into an age past, obviously Iron Man and like Captain America, which a lot of people really know, but like we're getting into like cool territory in my opinion. So very, very exciting stuff. I pretty much talked about everything I wanted to talk about, so I guess we'll end it up here. And yeah, thanks for watching this week's episode 51 of Critically Incorrect. Very different episode this week because obviously we don't have much gaming news to talk about, so we figured we'd talk about another news story, with Spider-Man, obviously. And yeah, especially since that has been such a big movie. Everyone's been talking about it. I feel like I've seen more discussion on this movie than like Endgame, which I didn't think was possible. So yeah, very, very cool to see. And yeah, we'll see you next week for episode 52. See you then. Take care.
See you later.